9th, 29th. The running clock is in order right now, folks, like the football games, Brendan. It is already running. Hey, we got Coach Matt Dean joins us from Memphis. AD at ULM John Hartwell joins us. We're also going to check in with Jeff Olson with Exo Armor, talk about all this stuff being done to make football more efficient, safer, not less physical, but more safe and attract more people to the game. We'll also have Gary Harris from Tuscaloosa checking in as well. We're going to talk a lot about Texas and Missouri and Oklahoma and all the SEC schools this morning. So smash that subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner and allow notifications on your Android and iPhone. Be a subscriber, and you'll get a ding every morning. Pen and paper are necessary because a lot of note-taking is about to occur. Be right back.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Matt Dean, John Hartwell in here with us right now. And I feel like I'm being interrogated in a Turkish police station right now with the light. Something wrong with the light this morning. But anyway, we'll make it work. I didn't do it. I'll just say that. John Hartwell, Matt Dean.
He did it, everyone, just so you know. I'm blaming him. And I told him this morning that he was fired. He's no longer around to be my gaffer.
I'm telling you, I was messing with too many buttons. But I want to ask y'all, I'm going to start with John. The new rules in college football that keep that clock running nonstop. A lot of people are saying this is terrible. Mike Norvell didn't like it. I wonder how he would have felt had Florida State won the game Saturday over in Dublin. But what is your interpretation? I know you know about it. Then I'm going to go to Matt because it's going to have an effect in some games this year. It's already done it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it changes your offensive philosophy. You just got to be aware of it and know that you've got the 2-minute, warning, although, or an additional timeout. But in a lot of the, games that were played last week, it really didn't matter. And our staff's really approaching it. And, today's game day for us. We have Jackson State with the 6 p.m. kick here tonight in Malone Stadium. They think it may cut down maybe a possession per half. And obviously you've got to be, as efficient as possible with those possessions. But I don't, anytime you come out on the short end of a game, you have folks who like to look for areas to blame. And again, if you're efficient in what you do offensively and protect the football, I think you're going to be just fine.
Matt, your take on it real quick before we get into some the games.
Hey, first of all, good luck, John, tonight. I love the video you sent us last night. You got great hands.
I did
still.
too.
Go ULM. And here's a couple things. First of all, as a ball coach myself, former ball coach, I think that the addition of the 2-minute warning makes it more like an NFL model with the running clock you're talking about sometimes when they go out of bounds. Okay. So you have to prep for that, and that going in. So here's where it really benefited Georgia Tech, though. They're a smash mouth team that ran the football, moved the chains. If you can't get off the field, all we heard pregame, I was watching Game Day, right? And Saban on there is phenomenal by you. I think he's really upgraded the show. But Saban told everybody, because Brett Key's a former assistant of his, that how improved they are. And their offensive line, all we heard pregame was how good Florida State's defensive line was. I don't know if you guys watched that at all. And they could not stop the run. And that's just the way it is. If you lose a game like that, we wish you had an extra possession. Yeah. But, defensively, I think that's where they lost the game. Everybody, DJ, the quarterback, ukulele, and I can't pronounce it. But honestly, he's a really good game manager, but he's not going to be the explosive QB1. So you knew that going in. So in turn, Florida State did not have enough success running the football themselves, which really affected the outcome.
Yeah, and John, officials, they're never going to be popular. They're always going to be blamed. But you think about Brent Key at Georgia Tech. He was on those George O'Leary teams that beat Georgia 3 years in a row. And you look at the job that he's done since he took over at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is 5-0 against ranked ACC opponents. The Ramblin' Wreck is doing some things well. So that's going to be a fun storyline in the ACC. Switching back over here in the SEC, we got the 4 big ones this weekend. Everybody, you're an athletic director. You know what it's like to have to make decisions, big time decisions. A lot of them you got to make, and it's not fun to fire a coach regardless. Everybody, I think it's got to stop the insanity. Billy Napier, they lose the game against Miami. They may fire him after the game. This is absurd. We've lost our collective minds a long time ago. But I got to say, with the House settlement of $21 million, is that every D1 school has to pay that this year, next year, and every year after that? If that is in fact true, how can an athletic director say, okay, we got $21 million, we got to find, and then I'm going to go get rid of a coach and pay him not to coach and all of his assistants and then buy out a new coach to come in? Is that what it is?
Well, it's not all D1. It's, the $21-22 million figure is for Power 4 institutions. That's the going forward money.
Okay.
But also over the course of the next 10 years, those Power 4 schools, along with the rest of us in Division I, will pay varying amounts to settle the $2.7 billion back settlement on this. And for quote, lost name, image, and likeness. And oh, by the way, no offense to any attorneys listening in out there, which I know you have some in your listeners, a significant chunk of that money is not ending up in student athletes' pockets. A significant portion is ending up in the attorneys' pockets who've been involved in this case. So, but yeah, here's the thing, Rob. As long as you have donors, and I think it's been 2 or 3 weeks since I've been on when you made a foghorn leghorn analogy. As long as you have foghorn leghorn out there, the mystical donor who's got the deep pockets, the desire to win, and again, think about this from a business perspective. Those who want to win the most, a lot of times, are those who approach their business life like that too, and are able to generate significant dollars. So the patience level is not high. And I think I'm gonna go contrary to what a lot of people think. I think the patience level is going even lower based on the transfer portal, because you're going to have donors saying, hey, why couldn't you just flip the whole roster? I mean, I'll take our roster. On today's opening roster, we've got 73 kids that are dressing that were not at ULM last football season. So it's, you have the ability to flip a roster pretty quickly. And I think with those high level donors who write the biggest checks, I think their patience level is getting even shorter. Now, is that only going to last 2 or 3 games into a season and a team gets off to a slow start? I would hope not. I would hope the trigger wouldn't be that quick. But, there's some extenuating factors in some of these decisions that a lot of people don't know on the surface.
Yeah, and I mean, again, Scott Strickland has hired Dan Mullen, then he hired Billy Napier. They've got an interim president right now at Florida. So I think it's crazy that you're changing coaches. If you're doing it every 2 or 3 years, it's not going to pay off. And people, I think it gives a lot of fans pseudo power to think that they're going to make the change. And it's going to come down to Foghorn, J.R. Ewing, and a bunch of guys in big hats and bolero tie. That's what happens. All right, John. Right now, we got 4 big games in the SEC coming up this weekend. We know about Florida, Miami. We've also got Clemson, Georgia, LSU in Las Vegas against Southern Cal. What is Las Vegas? 3 hours from Los Angeles. But, I mean, LSU is going to take – Ron Higgins said the other day they're going to take 30,000 fans. And then you've got Notre Dame at Texas A&M. That's going to be an interesting one because Mike Elko was at Duke last year. His quarterback from Fairhope, Alabama, down in Baldwin County, Riley Leonard, is now at Notre Dame. And, you know, if people ask Mike Elko, does this give you an advantage? He goes, no, I think it gives Riley Leonard and Notre Dame an advantage because they know our system that we're going to use. All that being said, I think Texas A&M made a great choice in this hire of Mike Elko. Do you know him? Do either of y'all know him? He seems like a really smart, level-headed guy who's not fixated on himself.
Go ahead, Matt.
Well, my son worked for him, and you know, he was a fantastic defensive coordinator, and I think he proved the last 2 years at Duke. He's turned into a really good head coach. You know, the one thing about an Elko coach team is they're going to be sound defensively. We know that. Stemming back, I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, John, the former coordinator one time defense at Notre Dame. I could be wrong, but I just think they're going to be very sound defensively. I think it's one of the most intriguing matchups of the whole weekend, to be honest with you. If this game was played on a neutral site or at Notre Dame, I would favor Notre Dame. But at Kyle Field, John, I believe you guys played there last year. It's just a big-time advantage. I think A&M probably wins a close one. I think it's going to be lower scoring because I think you look at Marcus Freeman, he's a defensive-minded coach. You look at Elko, defensive-minded coach. And I think Riley Leonard versus Connor Wegman, 2 great young quarterbacks, going to be a good matchup.
Well, Riley Leonard is another one of those guys that how does he get out of the state of Alabama? He's pretty damn good. But there's great high school football down there. We're going to bring in Jeff Olson here in just a minute. Jeff is with Exo Armor Company based out of Auburn. They're all over the country, really all over the world. And one of the reasons I thought it'd be cool was because both of y'all as coaches, athletic directors, and, you know, you understand investments. Exo Armor, they're using 3D printers, making pads during games that are able to be put on players that could get them back out on the field. And Jeff is one of the sales reps for Exo Armor. And I took the full tour in late July in Auburn about a month ago. My head was spinning in there because you got a lot of really smart engineers in there making the game better because it gets you better players on the field more. So, Jeff, join us when you can. I know you're on the road right now. John, Jeff, here you are. Hey, Jeff, tell us. I've got Coach Matt Dean at Rhodes College. He coached men's and women's basketball there. John Hartwell is the athletic director at University of Louisiana Monroe. He was at Utah State for 7.5 years before he came here. He's been at Ole Miss, Georgia State, Troy, a native of Mobile. I call him a Mobilian. But, Jeff, tell us your background because I was in Auburn about 5 weeks ago today. Dr. Waller May and I went over there and got the tour out there at the Research Park with Dr. Michael Zabala. Smart, really smart group of people out there. Maury Gaston turned me on to this company several years ago. Tell people what y'all are doing to make not just football but all sports better and getting players back on the field more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's great being here, listening to all the SEC talk. I was actually down in Tuscaloosa on Tuesday, doing an install with Alabama and everything, and so it's so great to talk to you guys. But yeah, what we're doing at Exo Armor, it's kind of it's not really unprecedented. Like people have been doing 3D printed things for a long time, understanding that like 3D printing has actual like tangible things you can use and for real life applications, but then bringing that into like sports and medical facilities and things like that, being able to tailor these guards to exactly the bodies of these athletes, be it a football player, basketball player, soccer, lacrosse, up and down the field, being able to give them something that's created for them, to their body. It's not going to fit anybody else the way that's going to fit them. Is it's like buying a suit. It's like there's nothing wrong with going in and borrowing a suit, from your dad. But if you get something that's tailored to you, it's going to look better. It's going to quote unquote perform better as well. And then the biggest thing is putting these 3D printers in the facilities. Because these athletic trainers, like, they work harder than nearly anybody else on campus. They get paid, far less than what they probably should. But they're there working their early hours, and so being able to give them back time for what for all of the treatments and things that they have to do within the training room, being able to give them time to be like, hey, instead of sitting in the corner playing arts and crafts with the calculator and putting different orthoclasts and these things together that take up 10, 20, 30 minutes, sometimes even more, to they leave them to go do other things to help athletes get back out on the field. And then we're in places like you were mentioning, like Auburn and Alabama. I was at Penn State yesterday, but then going to quote unquote smaller schools like a Rice or a South Alabama. I got a text from the trainer at Rice saying, hey, we had an athlete who would not have been able to practice if we weren't able to create this guard in the time that we did. Because typically if you do like a scan, you have to wait 3 or 4 days or whatever it is for the guard to show up. If it shows up and it's not right, then you got to wait another couple of days for it to come back. So being able to give them back that time to allow the athletes get back to practice faster. And then with kind of our business model, being able to get away from just post-injury things to go into preventative stuff like, well, how can we create these guards so these athletes don't get hurt in the first place? And what's the price on, a starting quarterback or a running back or an outside hitter or a goalkeeper being able to, have a protective device so they don't get hurt? What's the value of that? It's kind of hard to quantify, but yeah.
Well, John, you're an AD at ULM. You see something like this make a lot of sense to you?
Yeah, no doubt. Because, ultimately it comes down and we've all, people get caught up in wins and losses and the dollars flying around. Ultimately, our number one thing has to be student athlete welfare and student athlete health. And obviously what Jeff and these guys are doing is, cutting edge. And like he says, it helps guys in a safe manner get back on the field quicker. And so, hats off and kudos and appreciate what you guys are doing, not just for the game of football, but college athletics as a whole.
Yeah, it is. Matt, you look at it, and Matt's over at Rhodes College, D3, but athletes are athletes, Jeff. I mean, and Matt, could you see where an application like this could work for y'all?
Absolutely. What Jeff and his company are doing is just, going back to what John said, it's student athlete, welfare, but also student athlete performance. And just to have something out there that's going to get kids back on the field faster, the court faster. That's what us coaches, as a former coach, that's what we're looking for. And really, from an athletic trainer perspective, this is an area where, I always relied on my athletic trainers, for the welfare of my student athletes. And anything we can help our athletic trainers with, any kind of device, equipment per se, it just makes our whole product better. And, we're all about student athlete success. And to me, this kind of defines it on the welfare and performance side.
Yeah. Jeff, real quick before you go, let people know how they can get hold of you, what the demo is like, and just what something like this costs if a school wants to implement it. We'll let you go because I know you got a busy day.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, for us, it's a subscription model, and you can reach out to us through our website. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. Oftentimes, like, I give out my personal cell, and so we're always, in contact with everybody as often as possible. I'm answering text messages, 8:00 on a Sunday night, because that's when the athletic trainers work. So that's when, I'm always available. So we're reaching out through the website and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a subscription service. And we usually have, like a base fee of, between $10,000 and $12,000 for the year. That includes the printer, the scanner, access to me and to the engineers who are far smarter than myself. But that brings in a lot of the other things too. Like we get an unlimited amount of guards that you can print, so you don't have to get invoice for each individual guard that shows up. $100, $200 here or there. It's all kind of built in. So for us, like, we're seeing a lot of benefit with that, because then you can get in, like I mentioned before, being able to print shin guards for the soccer team, or wrist braces for rifle or whatever. So it's really great, especially at a lot of these places where football is the tip of the spear, and they're going to use it most just because of the nature of the game. But then all the places we go, they all open it up to all of the students and all the athletes there and all the other sports. So basketball can come over and get scanned, or if a cheerleader sprains his or her wrist or whatever, like it's a very like a joint venture where everybody gets access. You see something new and fancy, it's like, oh, it's going to the football team. It's like, yes, but they can open it up to everybody else, and that doesn't change the price. If you scan 1,000 thumb guards or whatever, like it doesn't change the price for us. But we're always looking to innovate and change it and kind of build upon the success that we've had in the past. And so we're always kind of like it's an ever growing kind of ecosystem and process.
Look, we'll get you back on again. This Exo Armor is a game changer. I mean, it's probably the biggest thing since the ice bath. I mean, it really is. It changes, and I've held those pads, and they're light, but they're effective. But anyway, Chef Olson, Exo Armor, thanks so much for joining us, and have a great one. Great season ahead. Looking forward to hearing from him. That is cool stuff. If you can't get your players on the field, it really doesn't matter. John, I know you've got limited time this morning. It's opening day, game day. ULM's playing Jackson State. College football, I loved watching that video that you did last night, because it just shows everywhere you go, it matters locally. And we've tried to, we make football a national game, but it really is, it's local, but it's all the local fan bases getting together that make it a great national game. And you say national pastime is baseball, but it's a national passion.
Yeah, we've got a big weekend here. Like I said, got the game tonight at 6. We have soccer at home today against McNeese State at noon. And then tomorrow and Saturday, because high school football games have not started here in Louisiana yet, we've got the Bayou Jam. So we've got actually 16 teams competing in a jamboree Friday and Saturday here. So it's wall-to-wall football, and some really good teams that folks throughout the Southeast will recognize the names of when you talk about Neville High School or Evangel or Oak Grove and schools like that produce college players, all over the Southeast. So exciting weekend here, and looking forward to it. Hey, I want to go back to the games you were talking about briefly earlier. One that I think a lot of people have said, hey, that's a foregone conclusion that Georgia's going to beat Clemson. Dabo, for the last year or so, people have said, has the game passed Dabo by? He's been slow to adapt to, to the transfer portal and NIL and stuff like that. I think this is going to be a heck of a football game, and don't forget about this either. So the offensive line coach and run game, I think his other title now is run game coordinator at Clemson, is none other than Matt Luke, who used to be the head coach at Ole Miss. He was the O-line coach for Kirby at Georgia when they won national championship. He's now the O-line coach and run game coordinator at Clemson. And don't think he's going to have some insight into things that Kirby and that Georgia team do. I think that's going to be a really good football game.
I agree with that. And Matt Luke's one of the more talented offensive line coaches anywhere. He got rushed into the head coaching position, but I think that's a good one. Before you go, you got to pick on Florida, Miami, LSU, and Southern Cal, and Notre Dame, Texas A&M. And then I want to hear what your thoughts are on that. And then, Matt, you counter after that.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with I'm going to go Clemson in the upset. I know that not a whole lot of people will say that. Florida, Miami, I'm going to have to go Miami. And I know the Gators aren't going to like to hear that either. LSU, SC, I'm going to have to go with the Tigers, not because I'm in the state of Louisiana now. I just think they're really, really talented.
Yeah.
And I think the Mike Elko era gets off to a good start at A&M.
Okay, that would be. I think they would like that out there in College Station, John. I mean that. Matt, agree, disagree? I like him thinking outside the box. Nothing wrong with picking Dabo.
I agree mostly with John. I do think, I think the LSU game's intriguing, but I'm going to go with the Tigers there. I'm going to go with John. I'm going to go A&M in a close game. I think it's a low-scoring game. Not to say we should take the under on this program, but that's my thoughts. And then I think Clemson, Georgia is one of the most intriguing matchups as well, John. I will take Georgia by a field goal, but it would not be shocked. And I agree with you. I think the last year Dabo has stewed. He's won 2 national championships there. He's been runner-up 1 time. I think he's been in the college football playoff 4 times. I could be wrong. But
yeah,
the reality of the situation is he has not really lived in the portal like other colleges, but, man, he builds players, and I think they're going to be I didn't know Matt Luke was the run game coordinator. I think that's a big deal. It would not shock me if they won that football game. But, everyone's saying Georgia's the real deal. That's why we love game ones. I just texted John. There's nothing like game one. I remember when I was coaching basketball. Everybody thinks they're really good, and you're going to find out a lot about yourself. Once you get videotape out there, everyone knows a little bit more about you. It's fun. And that's why last thing I want to say is everyone buried Florida State after last week. Let's give Georgia Tech a little credit. Georgia Tech's a pretty good football team,
I agree with that. And John, that you think about a brand like the Georgia Tech brand that's been dormant, kind of quiet. Brent Key, you bring in the right guy. They've got wealthy alumni down on the flats in Atlanta at Georgia Tech. It'll be fun. It's going to be fun. But I think people are not thinking enough about what Matt Luke brings to Clemson. And you're right. You know him from your days at Ole Miss. That will be a cool storyline to watch. John, before you go, what is in the national picture right now? What is a story that we aren't talking about that is not off the record? I always have to qualify that statement, that people are going to be hearing a lot about this college football season. You as an AD might know.
Here's what's front and center on my mind, and I think a lot of ADs this next week. You've mentioned the House settlement. There's a preliminary hearing kind of trying to iron out some of the details on that scheduled for this next week after Labor Day. We have some general parameters, but it's going to be interesting how it plays out here and the impact and, the squad limits and having scholarships that go up to those numbers. And it's, the more you delve into it, there are a lot of people, including a lot of Power 4 schools that, when you go back to the $22 million we talked about earlier and having a loss of distribution to pay the back settlement, and then looking at all these additional costs in terms of potentially new scholarships. It's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out, because there aren't but a handful of folks out there who are going to have the cash flow and the annual operating budget to be able to throw at all of these things. So how everybody navigates that and is able to afford it, I think is going to be really interesting. It's probably going to take another 6 months for it to kind of play out, see where it goes from here.
Yeah, at some point, there'll be some common sense injected into the discussion. We need John Hartwell to be, I don't use the term czar, because I think of the Romanovs, and it did not end well for them, okay? So I want you just to be the head, and I'm not going to use the term committee because that's too political, and I think of 3-hour board meetings and nothing gets done but a bunch of hot air. We're going to stand at a table around top, and we're going to stand there, and it'll take 10 minutes or less, and we're going to solve all the world's problems. America's AD, John Hartwell, a proud Mobilian who does not eat seafood that has ever been frozen, only fresh.
Rob, I appreciate that. Guys, have a great game day. I'll say this, for all the challenges going on in what we, in the realm of college athletics, there is no feeling, just like Matt said earlier, there is no greater feeling than game day. And for all the challenges going on as we build to kick off here in Monroe at 6:00 tonight, the excitement, the anticipation, the students on campus, the buzz, not only on campus, but around town. All that there are some challenges we have, but all is well with the enterprise of college athletics, and just blessed to be a part of it, and blessed to get to spend about 35 minutes with you guys this morning.
Hey, I love it. It's a blessing.
Good luck,
always, man. Take care. Good luck. I'll be watching on the color TV if the neighbors have the blinds pulled up tonight. Cable's mighty expensive. John, Coach Matt Dean. Gary Harris will be joining us in just a moment from Tuscaloosa. But golly, man, I just see so many stories. Brendan, jump in here with us because I got some Gator questions for you. Our executive producer, Brendan Martin, down in Ocala, Florida. It never rains in Ocala, Florida. I'm kidding. They get more rough weather down there in Ocala and Gainesville than anywhere I know of.
Rob, I didn't talk about Miami, Florida when we were talking about some of the picks earlier. I just have a strong feeling the Gators are going to win this weekend. And I've heard some pundits say that, this is going to be you. The U is back again. How many times are we going to hear that the U is back? Yeah. I think the Gators win this game, and I think it spurs them on to a better season than people anticipate. And I hope I'm right, Brendan. I hope I'm right.
Let me throw right. Brendan, I'm going to throw one at you to add something here. In the last 20 years, okay, how many double-digit win seasons has Miami had in football?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
One.
I get it, but here's the thing. I don't look at history with this stuff. That's not how I do this. History doesn't mean shit right now. It doesn't. It's done. History, that whole deal, that's all gone now. That's gone. We got Miami coming into Gainesville. Last time they were here, I think 08 or whatever. I was there. It's not a nice game. It's one of those nasty games with fan bases are not nice. Now you have in this area a lot of people who've moved up from South Florida. You have a lot more Hurricane fans here now than you've ever had. Because
really?
A lot of people, because everyone's left South Florida because of the hurricanes and all that, and they moved north. Yeah. So everyone.
Interesting.
Well, people cashing in. It's just they bought places. Now it's Miami's overhyped and all that area is too expensive. They're cashing in and moving north. Ocala, Florida, Marion County, third fastest growing county in Florida. And Florida is growing like crazy. That Marion County and Alachua, that's all University of Florida. So, Marion's not, but Alachua County is. So I'm just saying, you have a lot of people who found cheaper housing, safer places to be off the shore. Insurance is impossible to get these days in Florida. Forget it. Housing insurance, you can't get it. So a lot, especially if you're on the water. So what's happened is a lot of these, we're seeing a lot more of, especially in the villages, which is down south. You get a big conglomerate of Michigan and all that stuff. And Matt Dean's checking in. I'm just saying that, this game is going to be, and we're bringing Gary Harris. This game is going to be. Hey, Gary, we're just talking a little. He just sent a picture. He wanted to say what's up. We're talking Florida, Miami, and I was just saying that a lot of these fan base now in Florida has pushed up north, and we're going to have a lot more Hurricane fans in the state the seats, I think. And it's not a very nice game. It's a scary game, but I agree with Matt Dean. I actually think Miami's not that good. Miami's big thing is their front seven on defense. They're going to load the box. They're going to come after Graham Mertz. They're going, you're going to see a lot of that early to try to hold pace. But let me tell you, 3:30 in the Swamp on Saturday, first game of the year against Miami, it's going to be loud. It's going to be hot. loud and hot. And I don't think the heat's going to matter as much, but I think it's just going to be loud. And I just don't think Miami's good enough this year to come in that with a quarterback that's never played in the SEC, has never seen a game this size. You got helmet mics in your ear. All sorts of things are different. I just feel like, it won't. I think it's gonna be relatively close. I said earlier, I think it may be a blowout. I think you're gonna find out in the first quarter.
Yeah. Well, Cam Ward started his career at Incarnate Word, and now he's at Miami. Wow. Gary Harris, Tide 100.9, WVUA Channel 23 in Tuscaloosa. Gary probably been up since about 5:30 or 6. breakfast with Kalen DeBoer and the staff at 7 a.m. They give you all that kind of access, don't they? But anyway, Gary, you are all over, covering practice and everything at Alabama. You got Western Kentucky. Doesn't matter. Gary, would you agree with me? I remember something Pat Dye said years ago. He said, someone said something. Well, I'm going to go to the big games. He said, go to all of them. He goes, what do you mean, Coach? He said, you ain't going to see that other team play. You're going to see Auburn play. You're going to see Alabama play or Florida play. The fan base at Alabama, I would guess, is chomping at the bits to see what Kalen DeBoer is all about. But up to this point, he's doing a hell of a job of handling it and also saying, hey, I've also got Nick Saban there if I need a sounding board to go talk to. So I've set the stage, game time, kickoff, 48 hours away. What's not to like?
No, I agree with you. I think I think the fan base is chomping at the bit, and you're right about fan bases. I think that's what Eli Drinkwitz has been talking a lot about, is that we know we've arrived when you're coming to see us play instead of the opponent. And I think obviously at Alabama, it's been that way for a long time. Yeah, I think that to this point, Kalen DeBoer is throwing 100-mile-per-hour fastballs. I mean, he's throwing strikes. I mean, it's been a perfect game so far, but it's an exhibition game, and the real deal starts on Saturday night. And as we've talked about on this show quite often, all the good things that he's done in this fall camp, in this preseason, leading up to this first game, going back to spring ball, all the speaking engagements, everything's been great, but the performance on the field is what dictates the acceptance of a fan base, acceptance of a coach by the fan base, and he'll be judged like every other coach here. If he gets good results on the field, then it's going to be a nice smooth ride. If he doesn't, then it'll be bumpy, and people will say, yeah, he's a great guy, but so he understands that. He knows what he's dealing with, and he has not coached a game here, and I talked about on my sportscast this week that he's been a first-time head coach 3 other occasions, but he's never been a first-time head coach at Alabama, and it's going to be different than any other run out of a tunnel on Saturday night. But I think Alabama's got a quality football team. I do think this is a good opponent. I think Western Kentucky is not to take a shot at Auburn, but this isn't Alabama A&M. I mean, this is a higher caliber opponent. And it's not, Clemson, or it's not USC, or it's not Miami, but it's that tweener. It's not your lower end opener, and it's not your higher end opener. And you can make an argument that that's your toughest opener, because if you're playing a high end opener, everybody's jacked up to play, for Clemson and Georgia, or Miami and Florida, or USC and LSU. Auburn is going to win their game because the talent differential is just so great that they're really just looking at, how do we play? But Alabama, you've got to try to convince these guys that if you're not on your game, this is a team that's picked to finish second in the Conference USA, won a bowl game last year, has a quarterback that threw for well over 3,000 yards and 29 touchdowns last year at Texas State. So you got to be ready to go. And hopefully, because it's an opener, they will be, and they won't just look at it as, we're going to win this game in a blowout. And fans are already asking, how much is Ty Simpson going to play, and how much is this guy going to play? Remember, it's the first game. The first thing is to play the guys that are going to play. Let them play. Before you got Saban, you used to drive Saban crazy when you make assumptions about, we're going to play this many backups. And he said, how do you know any of them are going to play? So I think for Alabama, clearly they're better than Western Kentucky. I don't want to sit here and make it sound like they're not, but it's not a situation where they're playing a team that you could just go out and just be sloppy all over the field and look good. They're going to have to play well in order to get the kind of result that they want.
And one thing about Kalen DeBoer I think is pretty cool is the way he came up. I mean, he's from Millbrook, South Dakota, one of 2 South Dakota natives, along with Josh Heupel in the SEC as head coaches.
You know more about South Dakota than anybody I've ever met. I got to tell you that. Maybe
it's great. It's great pheasant hunting up there, man. I love going up there. But you know what? I think he does appreciate so much what these other coaches are going through at a program like Western Kentucky. And he knows, I bet he's able to get inside his players' heads and say, let me tell you something. They're looking at this and they're going, we're the ones that Alabama didn't want. Let's prove to them we're good enough, and let's go do it. And you hey, after what New Mexico State and Jerry Kill did last year to Auburn, you can never. And Alabama, the first year when ULM beat Alabama or UAB beat Alabama. Saban's first year at LSU. You never take anybody for granted. But you know what, Gary? The thing is, I'm looking at with Alabama is the offensive line. And Matt, you've heard us talk a lot, and Rodney Orr, when he's on here with us, talks about that class back in 21. And now you look at a guy like Wilkin Formby. Now, I know about him because the May family is close to that family. Wilkin is working really hard at the right tackle position, likely going to be a starter. It's really cool watching the development of this offensive line. But a question I have before I go to Matt is, what's Jaden Roberts' status as of today? Is he going to play Saturday? Are they going to hold him out? I thought I heard maybe he was banged up a little bit.
Yeah, my expectation is that he's going to play. He practiced yesterday, which was a full pads practice, and it's just I think it's his right hand. I had a little procedure done, but the expectation is that he's going to play, and Jam Miller, the running back, is going to play. The only player right now, according to Coach DeBoer on Monday at his press conference, that they'll probably hold out is Jeremiah Alexander, linebacker out of Thompson High School in Alabaster. He said that he probably won't play, but that he's getting close. So, yeah, I mean, as far as a first game, Alabama's about as healthy as you could be for a football team. So I think that's that's not an issue.
All right, Matt.
One thing that's interesting, Gary, you talk about Western Kentucky, and Rob, you guys are going to laugh at me because I'm bringing up Iowa, and there's no way I should ever bring up Iowa and Alabama in the same sentence. But 3 years ago, Iowa opened up. 3 years ago, Iowa opened up with South Dakota State, and Kirk Ferentz before the game told everybody, "Hey, this could be a really tough game." As usual, people don't listen. Iowa won that game 7-3. It's not your normal 7, 2 safeties and a field goal.
Okay? I remember that.
The Iowa offense, but 29 games later, South Dakota State has not lost a football game and won back-to-back FCS titles. So the expectation is the expectation. We're going to go out there and we're going to execute the game plan, and we're going to punish the opponent. And I expect Alabama to do that. And honestly, you talked about the offensive line. I think the offensive line is going to allow them to run the football. And once they run the football, play pass will allow them to go deep. I mean, I expect it. Kalen DeBoer's offenses are fun to watch, at least the last couple years when Roman Dunze was catching passes from Michael Penix Jr. So I expect the quarterback room to get better, and I expect the whole football team offensively to get better because, he's an offensive guy, and he's got great coordinators. So I'm looking forward to it, especially week 1, so we can kind of see where they're going to go offensively.
Yeah, Gary, the wide receivers at Alabama. Everybody remembers that great picture of Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs III, Devontae Smith, and Jerry Jeudy out of Deerfield Beach, Florida, coming out there on the field. How good is this class? Ryan Williams, Jason Caldwell said a year ago, he said, Rob, I'm projecting him to be the number 1 player in the country in the class of 25 out of Saraland, Alabama. Well, he reclassified, and he was still one of the he had him and Cam Coleman in the same state, and Perry Thompson. How good is high school football, by the way, in the state of Alabama? And what I love about you is Pickens and Reform and all that. You cover all those great high school games, so you know these kids from early on. You mentioned Thompson and Alabaster, the new Hoover, without Rush Probst, I might add. So I think there's more longevity likely to be there. But it's just an awesome game, and you cover it like very few people do. Talk about it.
Talk about the high school football caliber in the state.
Yeah.
Rob, is that what you said? I'm sitting in my car, and when I cut my car off, the signal's better, and when I cut it on to get some air, it breaks it up a little bit. I don't know why. But that's
only a few minutes. I don't want you to sweat
I think the top end of Alabama high school. And I could have gone on the inside, but I didn't want to be walking while we were doing this. So anyway, I think the top end of Alabama high school football is as good as you're going to find anywhere. I think the best players in Alabama would be among the best players in any state in the country. I think Alabama football, high school football, is important to people. As you said, in the smaller communities, it's kind of the fiber of who they are. Overall, in terms of the population base here, the number of great players isn't as high as Georgia or Florida or Texas or California, but the top end players are as good as you're going to find anywhere. And the passion for the sport here is unbelievable. We started Football Friday last week. on the TV side. My 1 hour high school show from 10:30 to 11:30. Got another one coming up tomorrow night. I think we had 16 games last week. We'll have, somewhere in that range this week. And whether you're doing a Class 7A game or you're doing a Class 1A game or you're doing an AISA game. And we know AISA football there aren't that many teams left anymore. But still, it's important to everybody here. And as long as it's that important, you're going to have good coaches. You're going to have a lot of players that grew up wanting to play football that are going to excel. So, yeah, it's a great state for high school football. There's no doubt about that.
It really is. And Matt, you mentioned about South Dakota State, 29 straight wins since then. And Gary, I remember Alabama lost September 14th, 1991, I believe it was, in the Swamp, 35-0 to the Gators, and reeled off 28 straight wins, including a national championship. That sometimes you got to hit rock bottom. It's always darkest before dawn. I think that's cool. Matt, always feel free to talk about the Hawkeyes. I love Kirk Ferentz just because of the longevity. And if he ever gets an offensive coordinator, Gary, wouldn't you agree with the defense that they have? I don't know if the defense would be as good, but, hey, man, Iowa, 2 coaches in the last 43 years. Hayden Fry, Kirk Ferentz. But, Matt, jump back in here with Gary Harris, Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa, talking Alabama, SEC, and the great game of college football.
So Gary, I'm curious, talking a little bit about the fans. We always have a tendency to overlook these early games, especially when it's out of conference. But what's probably the first game on Bama's schedule that you think is going to be probably the biggest test for Coach DeBoer? I mean, I know we talked about scheduling earlier shows, but what's the game that you're kind of penciling in and say, okay, our game plan's got to work and we got to perform? Have you thought about that at all? I know that may be a different question.
Yeah, I think it's at Wisconsin.
Great question.
I mean, I think a lot of Alabama fans are automatically jumping to Georgia, but I think that after 2 home games against decent opposition in Western Kentucky and South Florida, that week 3 game, they fly up to Madison on Friday, got to turn around early Saturday morning and play at Camp Randall in front of a rabid fan base that is really looking forward to this game on the road. The big noon kickoff for Fox. And I think that's a test. I don't know any other way to put it. I mean, I think that fans that are just brushing over that game, more power to them if they're that confident, but I don't know that they've necessarily done their research, to go into and I think Fickell's a terrific coach. And I think Alabama's a better football team than Wisconsin. But when you look at all of the elements going into it, I think that's a test. And I think if Alabama comes through that game and gets a win and they can come home for the bye and get ready for Georgia, then it's going to be just unbelievable. But that's not a game that I just automatically put in the check for the win column. I think Alabama will have to go up there and play well to win that football game. And I think it's a test.
Yeah. I mean, the peninsula, Madison, this isn't Green Bay. I mean, this is at Wisconsin, Gary. It's a true road game. I'm with you. I watch Wisconsin. If you look at them since Barry Alvarez came there in the 90s, and that entire culture changed, you can't judge it on bowl games. This is a real I think this might be one of the toughest true road games Alabama's played in. I mean, the Texas game 2 years ago, remember what it took there, a last second field goal. I'm with Gary. You start looking ahead to Georgia, you're a fool. Anybody look past Wisconsin. And even Alex Golesh in South Florida, remember that one last year when Milroe didn't play? That was a 24-10 win on the road in Tampa. But I think that it's good for your team to play true road games like that.
Yeah, they had to fight.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, they had to fight last year. Of course, they were unsettled at quarterback and offensively were a little bit of a mess. But yeah, that was a fight last year down in Tampa to beat South Florida. So yeah, that week 3 game at Wisconsin, they're going to be jumping around as they do at Camp Randall. So that's going to be a really tough game.
I mean, that's college football, though. I mean, the peninsula up there in Madison, that is a wild, crazy. I sound like Yortuk and Yertuk Yordanovich, 2 wild and crazy guys, but it will be nuts.
But sorry, Gary, just to your point, though, I think I think this is, you talk to a lot of fans for Alabama. I obviously Florida fans, it's our business, but I guess to the average fan, I try to explain that when you're a coach, and Matt, obviously, when you're a coach, you want these softball, a couple of warm up games, right? You want to find your rhythm. You want to find your place and get your guys, settled. When I trying to explain that with a team like Florida, who's going to start out like, gangbusters and it just doesn't really get a break. Gary, could you just briefly just discuss like how difficult in the SEC that is? Because I'm tired of the bowl conversation. Well, the SEC, look, they lost 3, won 5 this year because it's about the gauntlet. And these softball games, although people say, oh yeah, sisters of the poor and blind, I get it. I know you, but the reality is that these games are so necessary to win a national championship.
Yeah, the grind is unbelievable. And what makes it, again, you're pointing out, so tough for Florida is you've got the SEC grind. You got a coach that's under, some pressure. And in the non-conference, not only are you playing good teams, you're playing rivalry games. You're playing games that are as important to the fan base as some of these SEC games. When you're playing Miami and you're playing Florida State and you're playing Central Florida, those just aren't good teams. They're in your state, and you're the University of Florida. Your fan base expects you to beat these teams. I'm with you. I think that what makes Florida's schedule so tough is that they've got the SEC schedule, but then they've got tough games in their state. I mean, I can imagine if, of course, in Alabama and Auburn, it's a different situation. But even if you were Alabama and you were playing Troy and Jacksonville State, who are pretty good in South Alabama, it would be ramped up some just because they're in state. They're not the caliber of teams that Florida is playing against. But yeah, I tell you that Florida, you said it, it's a gauntlet, and because you're in the SEC and you've got that grind, you're right. You'd like to have a couple of games where you feel like, we can just show up and play. And even if we're not into it, but Florida really doesn't have that. It's going to be a challenge. I guess the flip side is emotionally, you just hope that because they've got so many big games that they're just dialed in every week. Beginning Sunday of game week, they're dialed in.
And maybe it gets harder if it doesn't it get a little harder if you keep winning? You keep winning now you're going to be it's locker room stuff. That's the thing. It doesn't get any easier. It's more successful.
Gary, you know what I think? One, Rob. Yeah, I just think the SEC schedule is like, let's say you're an accountant. You have 12 audits or tax returns you've got to do. Some of them are pretty basic. And then there's the one that's missing some documents or doesn't keep all their receipts. And you've got to say, well, you got to go find that for me. And some of them just take a lot out of you. And I think that's a great description, great questioning by Brendan to point that out. But Gary, look, love having you on here on the SEC Sidelines Sports Center. Tell people how they can follow you, and we'll let you go.
Yeah, Tide109.com, WVUA23.com on social, my Gary Harris WVUA23 Facebook page, and at Gary Harris _WVUA on Twitter. Thanks, guys.
See you next week. Thank you. All right, Brendan, I like that question. Matt, it's true. I mean, just as a coach, you've got to prepare your team. It doesn't matter who you're playing. Fans don't get that. They don't want to get that because they want to just think you can go, boo, and you're going to get a win. I wish it did work like that.
Well, it's momentary, Matt. Right? It's like, what have you done for me lately? I mean, is that not the not the rallying cry, but that's the thing in the back of every coach's mind is like, wow, I just got up for that last game, big win last week. Now we got to get up for it again on Monday. And get this next week.
One of the things that's interesting, like first games are definitely very challenging. At our level, we're allowed to scrimmage someone like another institution outside of our conference. We did it last week, right? So lost a tight scrimmage 14-10, but at the same token, we're on the road. We had a bunch of first-time players out there. We played everybody, and we also had some penalties. And I think when you look at a game like Miami of Florida, there's going to be some rust involved in the early portions of the game by both teams, okay? Yeah. Rob, you did point out, I forgot that Cam Ward is now the starting quarterback for the Hurricanes. Is that correct? And I've watched him play, Brennan, 3 or 4 different times in the last years because I follow the Pac-12 because of my son's Oregon football job.
Yeah.
But I just think that I've watched Graham Mertz play a little bit too, and I really like him. And I just think in these type of games, like when you're at the Swamp, that's why I go Florida in a close game. Doesn't mean Florida's going to win 10 games. They win this game, but I just, Brendan, you said earlier, I don't think Miami's Miami, but I think they're better, and I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I just like Florida here because I think it's easier to make less mistakes when crowd noise is on your side.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
this is where I don't think Florida State got enough credit for last year in the college football playoff discussion. We want to talk about the grotesque injury to their quarterback in week 11, whenever that happened, right? But look what they did week 0 when they just demolished LSU in that second half.
Yeah.
Okay. And, honestly, in week 1, I have not seen a better performance by a college football team lately than they did at LSU last year. And then everyone forgot.
Well, yeah.
But
Right. And that's the tale of two stories. They're the tale of two teams like all year last year. The Tennessee game, played great first half, second half. And I think that comes down to a lot to do with coaching. And that's where I called out Billy Napier and said, we know there's no OC this year. Does that affect them going into a schedule like this? How, to me, I'd want an offensive coordinator in my ear.
Well, it doesn't end well for a coach that is so hard-headed that his way's not working, and then he doesn't allow someone else to come in. The great coaches don't mind who gets the credit as long as you get the wins.
But you know what? It's all lined up for him, and I give him that. And I look, Billy's a great person. He's a nice human being. He's a great leader. He's good he cares about the player. He's a great guy. I mean, no question. I haven't met him, but what I hear from a lot of people, he's just a fantastic person. And why he probably recruits so well. One of the reasons, no question. But I'm just saying that, at this particular instance, look, I give it to him. He wants the ball. He wants the rock. He's got it. It's yours. Yeah. I mean, and this is the great. And look, it's full count, bottom of the 9th, bases loaded. Right now, and I know we're talking about next year, and Billy's going to be here. Yeah, he may or whatever, but it's going to be difficult mentally if you go, have a really bad season, regardless of the schedule. And that's the thing. People forget about the schedule of who you played. They just look at your record after a while.
Well, he's a very likable guy, and he's very trusting. When you see him, you're around him. You're right, Brendan, and he does recruit well. I'm just saying, I look at coaches that don't allow you've got to get help. I mean, look at Dabo at Clemson. I mean, in the last, he brought in Matt Luke, and that's something that John Hartwell was talking about as an offensive line coach. He's an elite offensive line coach. He sat out for a year or two because he had that big balloon payment from Ole Miss of, I don't know, 15, 20 million. I guess he just took it easy for a little while, but he's a hell of a coach. Y'all are right too. Brent Key at Georgia Tech. Keep your eye. And the thing is, he ain't going anywhere. He's a Georgia Tech guy. Played for George O'Leary. One thing, Matt, I want your thoughts on this. I'm a huge Mike Norvell fan because I saw what he did at Memphis, and I told people, I said, give him 2 or 3 years to fix that dumpster fire at Florida State, and in 2 or 3 years, he'll be winning 10, 11, 12 games a year. They won 10 in his third year, 13 last year. But I think he's wrong to harp on what happened, and I think he's kind of lost those guys. And when you had 31 guys quit on you in the bowl game and you got beat like they did, that he's got to change that. As a coach, isn't it dangerous to harp on what happened in the past too much?
Yeah, the whole thing is you got to move forward. And that's the thing. After we lose a game, when I coached a lot of games, guys. I mean, it's over. I mean, you give your players about 24 hours, and then the next practice, man, we're on, as Belichick said, we're on to Cincinnati or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So the reality is, I did not hear those comments till earlier in the show. You told me about the clock situation, how he was talking about that, and it's a bad look for him because they had a great year last year.
Yeah, he came out and said jet lag. Was it jet lag? He just said, it must have been jet lag.
Yeah, they had a great year last year. And
come on, bro, you're better than that.
Georgia Tech flew the same pattern, didn't they?
The jet lag made me act like a
But let me say this, guys. Rob, you mentioned the 31 players that didn't play in the bowl game, and everyone talks about Kirby's guys played. Yeah, but Kirby's culture is still way ahead of Mike Norvell's culture. Okay, in the world we live in the portal transfer and all this stuff, guys aren't staying around unless it's for a shot for the ultimate. They're not, especially the elite guys. So that's not on Norvell completely. Some of it is.
It wasn't. No, I agree. That was a situational thing. Yeah.
But also, I think the hardest part of coaching, and we don't talk about this much, we have expectations. We set goals. But readjustment of goals in season is very important too.
Yeah.
And you knew when Jordan Travis got hurt, man, they may not take us. And I don't think he kind of prepared his team well enough for that. And I'm not blaming him, but that was obviously what happened that day and the reaction when they didn't get picked.
Yeah, in a game like UNA, you're playing University of North Alabama. You've got Jordan Travis out there. It's not that you want to be so dismissive of the opponent you don't even play Jordan Travis, but God, if you're going to lose him, you don't want to, but you think it'd be against Florida or against Clemson or something like that. And I think what hurt the ACC last year, as far as Florida State not getting in the playoffs, the national perception was that league wasn't that good. But man, you can't talk about this stuff. It's the greatest game we got, college football. Tonight we'll be watching. It don't matter who's playing. It's just college football. Love the game. Love the players. Love the effort. And as fans, try to remain somewhat calm and rational. No need to panic here, is there, Brennan?
Yeah, there needs to panic. It's on. This is your week. You're undefeated right now. You're all undefeated, bitches. It's not going to last forever. So, crow at the water tower today. Let them all know how good you are because you may suck after Saturday.
Brendan, if Florida wins 8 games this year, you and I are going out to Red Rocks, Colorado, and broadcast live from the amphitheater and do a show just to say we can.
This is when Rob says we're gonna go do this. Figure it out, Brendan.
No, I'll get us a transistor radio or something.
Yeah. So I don't know why it's not working.
Hey, I gotta tell you, Brendan is my therapist. He's my Dr. Freud. I lay on the couch. Matt Dean, awesome. John Hartwell, Jeff Olson from XO Armor, Gary Harris, Tide 109 in Tuscaloosa, and WVOA TV 23. God bless America. See y'all tomorrow. Appreciate
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children